folks take the opportunity to get logged in and settled. Hey, well, good morning, everyone. I am Sarah Holland. I'm with Virginia Health Catalyst, and I'm going to just briefly kick us off by welcoming you all to this water fluoridation webinar that's specifically for water operators. Water fluoridation, community water fluoridation has been a hot topic in the news of late, and really looking forward to having the opportunity to dive in a bit more deeply about the importance of community water fluoridation, some of the latest research that has come out about community water fluoridation, and talk specifically about why it's good and why we care about it. We do have a poll that I hope that you all will take a quick second to answer for us as we gather data. Also wanted to just show you on the next slide that you all are in really terrific hands today. We've got a host of experts who are going to be sharing information on communication strategies. We're talking about community water fluoridation, talking about the specifics of handling and using fluoride as part of community water fluoridation, and also talking about the benefits of community water fluoridation. So really appreciate the expertise that is joining us today. And I am going to hand it off to Jill, who's going to be officially kicking off the webinar and our festivities today.
Thank you, Sarah. Hello, everyone, and good morning. My name is Jill Woodleaf, and I am the new Community Water Fluoridation Coordinator for the Virginia Department of Health. Some of you may have come across my name in emails or as I travel around the state doing my yearly site visits. Since my position has been vacant for many years, I am now hoping to reestablish a good relationship between VDH and waterworks operators. This will facilitate getting what's needed for your treatment plan to be optimally fluoridated in your community. I am also a dental hygienist of 20 years, and I understand the importance of fluoride in our water in protecting our dental health. Community water fluoridation has protected the oral health of Americans for almost 80 years by strengthening teeth, reducing cavities, and dental health disparities. You might think that one of your responsibilities as a waterworks operator is just to adjust the fluoride deficient water to optimal levels every day. But this responsibility plays an enormous role in improving the oral health of residents in your community. Did you know the #1 chronic childhood disease in the United States right now is tooth decay? As a waterworks operator, you play such an important role in the public's health by ensuring everyone in Virginia has clean, safe, and fluoridated water. Our goals for today are that we can provide you with enough information on fluoride to help you get a better understanding of the value of what you all do on a day-to-day basis. We hope to give you a brief overview of the history behind fluoride. We will dive into the safety measures in handling it at your site and some tips on how to effectively communicate with customers calling with concerns. As we close our presentation, we will share resources for you to share and continue to educate yourselves and your coworkers moving forward. Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Shelton, who has been leading the Virginia Department of Health as the state's health commissioner since Governor Glenn Youngkin appointed her in May of 2023. Dr. Shelton brings to the position a wealth of experience in public health operations, policy, healthcare management, and in caring for patients in both the public health and private healthcare sectors. Dr. Shelton, welcome.
Thank you so much, Jill. And we're grateful to have you in your position and role at VDH. It's much appreciated. But thank you all for attending today. Appreciate the Virginia Health Catalyst for hosting this today about a topic that is so vitally important to us all. And I know a lot of questions have been raised, and so I'm glad that we can talk about this very openly today, looking at the importance of fluoridation in our drinking water, making sure that we give everyone the opportunity for optimal oral health. As was mentioned, for children, tooth decay is one of the leading chronic diseases. And even in older adults, we see that tooth decay plays a vital role. If people start to have problems with their teeth, they can't eat very well, and that leads to other health issues as well. We know that proper oral health is also very important when we look at things like chronic inflammation and things of that sort. So we're very thrilled to have a simple way to be able to help prevent dental caries. So the role of water operators, by ensuring optimal water fluoridation, you all contribute directly to reducing and preventing oral health issues and enhancing the overall well-being of your residents. Fluoridated water is one of the most effective ways to prevent tooth decay, backed by decades of research and over 80 years of implementation. Fluoride is naturally occurring. It's a mineral. It's found in lakes, rivers, groundwater across the United States and the world. By adding and monitoring fluoride levels in our water, operators ensure that communities receive enough to enjoy the benefits and don't receive too much. As a local health director in the Southwest for 5 years, I would get regular reports from our field office there that were submitted by all the waterworks about the fluoridation levels in each of the waterworks in my district. And so I know it's a vital role that you all do to provide the fluoride, as well as to make sure we're monitoring it correctly. And as a local health director, I appreciated that opportunity. So Virginia is a champion for community water fluoridation. The town of Fries and the city of Lynchburg were among the first communities to begin water fluoridation in Virginia in 1952. Nearly 6.7 million Virginians now benefit from receiving fluoridated drinking water. And Virginia is ranked 7th in the nation for the number of residents with access to fluoridated water in community water systems. So good championship there. Recent studies have, however, raised some concerns about the potential for fluoride to lower IQ. We look at all these studies and put them amongst other studies and see what they show us and what do we need to think about. Fluoride in high concentrations, like iron or even water, it can be harmful, and research has shown that consistent exposure to naturally occurring fluoride at very high levels, 4 times the amount of what we use in routine water fluoridation, has shown an association with lower IQ. Research in countries like New Zealand and Australia that looked at fluoride levels similar to what we have in the United States that we put in our water did not find a link between fluoridated water and lower IQs. Additional research supports that the safety of fluoride levels below 1.5 milligrams per liter, which is more than double the levels that we use in Virginia water systems. We use 0.7 milligrams per liter. A recent analysis of 74 studies showed no connection between lower IQ and exposure to fluoride at levels less than 1.5. It did find a link with levels that were 3 times higher than what we use in Virginia's water systems. As far as the impact on oral health, in Virginia, communities with access to fluoridated water have 25% fewer cavities across all age groups. By reducing cavity rates, you help lower dental care costs for families and ensure better access to preventative care for all Virginians. This translates to improved quality of life, fewer missed days of school, work days due to dental issues. In Virginia, every dollar invested in a community water fluoridation saves an estimated $38 in dental treatment costs. This cost-saving measure reduces the financial burden on families and healthcare systems while promoting equity in oral health outcomes, particularly for underserved populations. In areas where they have stopped fluoridation in large amounts, after Calgary, Canada stopped fluoridating in 2011, children's urgent care dental treatments rose by 78%. Similarly, Israel stopped fluoridating in 2014 and rolled out a free dental care program as an alternative. Despite this, their population saw cavity rates double, and in a 2023 study determined that fluoridation significantly lowers caries-related treatment events, while national dental health legislation providing free dental care for children and adolescents does not have as great of an effect. So I do want to champion all that you do to be able to provide water in your systems and make sure that we're monitoring it carefully. And thank you all for playing a part in the health and well-being of Virginians.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shelton. I very much appreciate you taking the time to join us today, and also appreciate your candor. Fluoride has been in the headlines a lot, and I think it's really terrific that we have the opportunity to be able to talk about the recent research, to talk about the fact that like anything, there are risks to fluoride, to iron, to chlorine, to many of the things that we're already putting in our water or in our bodies to make ourselves healthier. And I just think it's a really important conversation to have. And I'm glad that there's curiosity and very much appreciate your support. As I mentioned before, when I welcomed us, I'm Sarah Holland. I'm the CEO of Virginia Health Catalyst. And Virginia Health Catalyst, as you'll see on the next slide, we're a statewide public health nonprofit. And our mission is to ensure that everyone in this really wonderful Commonwealth has equitable access to comprehensive health care, and that health care includes oral health. As you can imagine, a big piece of ensuring that folks have access to good oral health is ensuring that they have access to community water fluoridation. And as Dr. Shelton mentioned, we've been really successful in that endeavor, in that we have one of the highest fluoridation rates in the country. And almost all of Virginians who are on public water are currently able to access the benefits of fluoridation, which is something that I think we should all be really proud of. And I really want to thank each of you on this call for your commitment to that and your work in making communities healthier. We also started to understand that, fewer and fewer people are drinking their water. Folks have a lot of questions about fluoride. And through that work, we formed what we call the Water Equity Task Force. And one of the things that the Water Equity Task Force did was conduct a statewide survey of perceptions of drinking water for Virginians. And we've learned a lot from that study. We could actually have an entire webinar just on the things that we learned in that study. But one of the things that I wanted to make sure you all knew was what a high level of trust there is in the work that you guys are doing. The vast majority of Virginians, in the upper 70s, think very highly or highly of the water systems and the water operators that are making sure that the water coming out of their tap is safe, high quality, and fluoridated. That's a pretty enviable number. I think that it is unusual for us to have anything above about 50% in thinking about anything these days. And so I think that that's pretty incredible. We also learned that about the same number of Virginians trust their water and trust what is coming out of that tap. So again, I want to make sure that you guys really are commended for the fact that we have such a high favorability rate in the Commonwealth, and that people are feeling really good about the services that you all are providing, mostly silently and mostly behind the scenes, to make sure that folks in Virginia get what they need to be healthy. And I think we certainly know, those of us in the Richmond area, or those of us in far Southwest that were affected by Helene, understand what happens when you suddenly don't have ready access to water. And so I think we in times like that, you may hear the worst of us, but I think know that we are thinking most of the best of you as well. I am really pleased to hand this over to Dr. McAllister Castellas. She is our Director of Community and Clinical Care at Catalyst, and also an expert in public health and community water fluoridation. She's going to talk a little more specifically about what fluoride is, why it even works, so that we can be kind of grounded in that knowledge as we talk a little more specifically after that about some of the mechanisms behind fluoride and what you guys are dealing with on a daily basis, as well as some messaging. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Castellas.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I am so excited to be here speaking with you all today. I love talking about community water fluoridation, and I love getting to talk to our water operators. So I'm so grateful we have this time together. I know we have a lot of really great experts we're going to hear from, so I won't spend too much time, but I just want to emphasize some points that you've already heard from Jill and Dr. Shelton, and then just kind of, to Sarah's point, really help us ground in where we're coming from in terms of our evidence and our knowledge when it comes to the benefits of fluoride. As I'm sure we've all heard many times over, but fluoride is what really helps strengthen our teeth and prevent cavities. As Jill stated, that this is a naturally occurring mineral. It's found in our lakes, it's found in our rivers and groundwater and soil. It is all around us. It has always been all around us. I really love this analogy, and I'm Matt Jacob, who will be speaking soon. I believe you originally introduced me to this analogy, and I think it's so great that if we think of fluoride as think about our cars and how fluoride works is like a car. In your car, you have your seatbelt that's going to give you protection. You also have your airbag that will give you protection if you get into an accident. Fluoride is going to be that kind of two-modality protection when it comes to our teeth. We have our topical fluoride. This is the fluoride that's going to be in your toothpaste or in treatments at the dental office. This is the one that goes directly on your tooth surface, and it's going to strengthen our teeth by making repairs and fortifying the enamel to make it more resistant to decay-causing acids. Then we have the second arm that's coming in. That's our systemic fluoride. This is the fluoride that's in our drinking water. It's the stuff that's getting absorbed into your body and helping us build stronger teeth even before they emerge. So as our kiddos are developing their adult teeth, being able to consume that fluoride within our drinking water is going to help strengthen not just their primary teeth, their baby teeth, but will also strengthen those adult teeth that we would like to have them help them keep for the rest of their lives as well. We are a species that do not keep growing teeth when we lose them, so we really want to do everything we can to keep our current adult teeth as strong and as healthy as we can. So again, think about like when you're driving your car, you got two things to keep you safe. You got your seatbelt on, and then in the case of an accident, there's that airbag as well. Fluoride is doing that same thing for us. We're being able to have that double protection coming from both the systemic direction as well as that topical direct protection as well. Next slide, please. So, when community water fluoridation was first discovered, it really revolutionized oral health. And as I mentioned, fluoride is something that's all around us and has always been around us. It was actually initially discovered in the early 20th century in a community in Colorado where a dentist had noticed that the children in that community had really low rates of dental decay. And he started to ask, okay, why, and found out that it was because of this naturally occurring fluoridated water that the community members were consuming every single day. And they realized that there was this already really great mechanism that exists in our natural world that we're able to use to help protect and strengthen our teeth. Then in the 1940s, Grand Rapids, Michigan was the first community that actually began intentional community water fluoridation programs. So this was a community that began to add fluoride into their community water, again, to help strengthen their community members' teeth, to help provide some additional protection against decay. And I would just like to acknowledge that we are coming up on our, I believe would be the 80th anniversary of community water fluoridation. So it's been around for a while, and I'm so excited that it continues to be such an important public service that we can provide. And then since that time, over 25 countries across the globe have continued to utilize community water fluoridation to help improve the oral health of their communities. So not just us here in the United States, but our neighbors to the north in Canada, across the oceans in New Zealand and in Australia. We see that this is a very regular process that many communities are utilizing. And today, the CDC identifies community water fluoridation as one of the 10 great public health achievements of the 20th century. It's right up there with our vaccinations and a lot of other things in our day-to-day lives that we can take advantage of that keep ourselves and our loved ones safe and healthy as well. Next slide, please. So, as you heard from Dr. Shelton and from Jill, community water fluoridation helps improve our oral health and also saves money for our communities. We do know that it can reduce tooth decay by up to 25% across all age groups. In addition to that, with this protection that our fluoride gives and the strengthening that to our teeth fluoride gives, we're actually able to decrease the need for really costly dental procedures. I'm a dentist by training, and unfortunately, I recognize I'm not always everyone's favorite person to see. I do really love dental work, though, and I do love those patients that do come and see us on that regular basis as well. However, there's a reason why it can be a little scary to come to the dentist. And how great is it that if you have community water fluoridation and that you're regularly participating in that, that not only are you doing a great service for yourself, I, as the dentist, would love to be out of business because we're keeping your teeth so strong and so healthy with the community water fluoridation. So just thinking about every dollar that we spend on community water fluoridation, you can see up to a $20 return on investment within your community as well. Ultimately, community water fluoridation is a way that we're able to provide equitable access to a cavity prevention service, and it's accessible to everyone regardless of age, income, or education. Next slide, please. So, as you have heard from Dr. Shelton, that we have decades of research that does confirm that fluoridation is safe and effective in our communities. Currently, we have that optimal level, which is set at 0.7 ppm, also milligrams per liter. It's that same measurement, just two ways of describing that right there. To Sarah's point as well, there can be so much as too much is a good thing, and it's something we think about in our water supply. Everything from that chlorine we put in to iron to all those other things that we do to our water to make sure that stays safe and healthy for all of us. Fluoride is no different from this. So just ensuring that we're really at that optimal level is really important. Because we do see that when there are higher levels of community water fluoridation and there's that extended exposure, that's when issues may arise. And that's where a lot of those studies come from. But those studies are grounded in communities where there was an incredibly high level of water, of fluoride in that water. We're talking 1.5 ppm, so double that concentration of what we optimally use in the United States. And then it's a chronic exposure that's happening as well. The United States, we stay well within those safe ranges that is recommended to us, and ensuring that our communities are not receiving, again, too much of the good thing. And again, multiple professional and scientific organizations, everyone from the Centers for Disease Control to the American Dental Association to the American Pediatric Association, um, reaffirm the safety and efficacy of using community water fluoridation as a public health practice for our communities. Next slide, please. Our research, we have decades of research of really high quality studies that do confirm that fluoride is safe and is effective. And these high quality studies come from our own country within the United States, but we see it from our neighbors in New Zealand, Australia, and Spain that do confirm fluoride safety and efficacy. And I really thank Dr. Shelton for lifting up that study from Calgary. And there's actually something very similar to that happened in Juneau as well, that when these communities made a decision to stop fluoridating their water, which was a decision informed by the evidence that they had at that time, they made the decision to end their community water fluoridation. And as a result, they saw an increase in the number of dental cavities and dental decay that was in their communities. So then taking this new evidence in conjunction with the other evidence base about the benefit of community water fluoridation ended up reintroducing community water fluoridation back into their communities as well. So just acknowledging that there is a lot of evidence out there, and we're all trying to make informed decisions on what is available to us and where our knowledge is, and what the research has been able to demonstrate to us. But again, just time and time again, our research has confirmed that we have high quality studies that fluoride is safe and effective in our community's water. Next slide, please. And with that, I just wanted to say thank you to all of our wonderful water operators on this call today. Your ongoing dedication to keeping our community water safe and healthy and enriched with our evidence-based practices is so important and so vital for the health of our community. So we really appreciate your work and your dedication to this as well. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julie, who will be introducing our next speaker.
Good morning. My name is Julie Floyd. I'm with the Virginia Department of Health Office of Drinking Water. I'm the Operator Certification and Training Manager. I am pleased to introduce our next speaker. Jose Gonzalez comes to us from Univar Solutions. Univar, you may have heard their name before, but they are one of the companies that supplies certified chemicals to the water industry for a variety of treatment processes. So Jose is going to bring some very good information to this group about that today. He has a bachelor's in chemistry from the University of Delaware, followed by 39 years of industry experience focused on water treatment chemistry development and application. Jose has worked on projects around the world, perfecting chemical treatment solutions for water and wastewater. He will be speaking today on the science of fluoride in drinking water systems. Okay, so Jose, it's all yours.
All right, Julie, thank you very much. Really happy to be part of this group and to be able to present this with you. Spent a lot of time working with the folks in the water plants and in the water industry, and really appreciate your participation in this and the chance to present this to you. So we're going to talk a little bit about the actual fluoridation chemistry. How do we do it in the water plant? How do we get this out into the community? So if we can go to the next slide. We're going to talk a little bit about the options for chemistry out there that adds fluoride to water. We'll talk a little bit about the pros and cons of each one of them. We'll talk a little bit about safety. How do we evaluate safety with regards to the use and application of these chemicals? And we'll talk a little bit too about best practices, how to best do this in your water plant. So next slide, please. And throughout this whole talk, I really want to focus on two goals for treating water. And those goals are broad, but they're important. And it's safety And that's safety for not only the community, but also for the operators that are performing the work, making the water, and also simplicity. If you've been around the water industry at all, in the recent years, you'll see it's very, very difficult to get personnel to run the plant. So we're staffed very tightly, and processes need to be simple and safe. All right, so we'll just kind of keep those in mind throughout all this. So if we look at ways to add the mineral fluorine to drinking water, there are three basic chemistries that we use in the US to do that. The original one that was mentioned started out in Grand Rapids, Michigan, as sodium fluoride. And then there's also sodium silica fluoride, and those two are dry fluoride sources. That means that they come to the plant in a dry powdered form. And then on the other hand, we've got a liquid fluoride source, and that's hydrofluorosilicic acid. And that also provides the fluorine molecule as do the other two, just different ways to deliver it. We'll talk about the differences of that here shortly. Next slide, please. So looking at sodium fluoride, we all see the pictures. If you've worked in a water plant that's used them and you see the skull and crossbones on the bag, full strength sodium fluoride is a toxic chemical. And a lot of the chemistry, we use probably anywhere between 5 and 10 different chemistries to make drinking water. And if you look at all those chemistries in their neat form, they are all going to have some sort of either toxicity or corrosivity associated with them in their neat form. Sodium fluoride is no different than that. The GHS label is toxic, and it's toxic by ingestion or inhalation. There's currently no US manufacturing of sodium fluoride. It's made overseas, a lot of it coming out of China. This is a chemistry that in the neat form is absorbed through contact. So what it means is that it requires the operators to have the appropriate PPE for making up the solution of fluoride that's put into the drinking water. It's fed using a saturator, which we'll talk about how that works in a little bit. But those are the basics of sodium fluoride. If we go to the next slide, we'll see sodium silica fluoride. And that is very similar. It's a slightly different chemical makeup, but many of the same properties as the sodium fluoride. One of the things I also want to bring to light with all of these chemistries and any chemistry that goes into drinking water is that all these are approved by NSF, the National Sanitation Foundation, and they look at all these chemistries for potential contaminants and things like that. And they analyze them very, very closely. I think there's several hundred things that they analyze these for. And when you have an NSF certified chemistry, you're also going to have what is termed a maximum use level for this particular chemistry. And what NSF guarantees is that anything below that maximum use level for the chemistry is deemed safe through their testing. So if you look at your packages of all these chemistries or the information sheets that you get with them, you will see the NSF certification and a maximum use level associated with those. So it's important to know what those are and what they mean. So if we go to the next slide, we'll see the characteristics of hydrofluorosilicic acid. So this actually comes as a 23% solution. So it's not a solid. It is made in the USA pretty much entirely. Whatever the chemistry that we use here in the US is all made domestically. Its GHS label is a little bit different. Its main thing is that it's a corrosive material. Now, I do want to bring to light that this is not an RMP or a risk management plant chemical. The name hydrofluorosilicic acid is actually very close to hydrofluoric acid, and sometimes they get confused. Hydrofluoric acid, totally different animal, some very different characteristics, and it is an RMP chemical. But hydrofluorosilicic acid is not. It is fed directly from the bulk storage tank or possibly from a day tank if you practice that. It could be fed from drums or totes as well, from containers. So what that brings with it is minimal handling. You're not having to open bags and deal with the chemistry, have contact with the chemistry on a daily basis. So it's fed to the process using a metering pump. And we'll get into some of those details a little bit more here in the upcoming slides. So next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about that, the safety and handling of all the chemistry. We work in the water industry with some pretty pretty potent chemistries, sulfuric acid, some of the coagulants like ferric chloride, very corrosive chemistry, chlorine gas, obviously, probably one of the more dangerous things if you're still working with that. So we work with some very dangerous chemicals, but used properly, worked with properly, dosed properly, they make some of the safest drinking water in the world. And we'll talk a little bit about how we can do that with fluoride. So as a safety professional, if you're looking at ways to either introduce a new chemistry or improve a process, we kind of follow this kind of upside down triangle chart. And we start out by asking ourselves, is this something that can be eliminated or substituted? Well, fluoride right now, most of us have to feed, so elimination is not an option, but substitution is. So we have different options for feeding the fluoride. From there, we go into the engineering controls, and these are things that are designed into your feed equipment or into your methods that kind of help protect the operator and help protect the community from things like overfeeding fluoride. We're trying to isolate the hazards here by looking at engineering controls. We go down a step further to the administrative controls, and those are things like training, rules, things like that an organization has. Basically, if you're going to be working or doing a process, you need to be trained a certain way in it. There are certain rules with regards to what sort of personal protective equipment you should be wearing. And these are going to be dependent on the hazard of that particular chemistry and the route of entry of that chemistry. But that's basically how we go through the process. So if we go to the next slide, we'll kind of see how that applies to our choice in fluoride. So with regards to elimination, we have to feed fluoride. So we are going to have to choose one of the chemistries. Now, if we take a look at the two solid forms versus the liquid form typically requires a lot less contact by the operator than the solid forms. So in order to kind of make a decision based on safety, we'll take a look at the liquid, and we'll kind of follow that through the rest of this presentation. But then the engineering controls associated with that, we want to design a proper storage system that's safe. We want to design it with the proper venting. We want to design it with the proper piping that allows us to meter out the chemical properly and make sure that we're adding the amount that we're adding. We want to make sure we have some feedback probes and things that allow us to monitor the dose of fluoride. So a lot of different engineering controls in the process. And then finally, the personal barriers. We need to address some of the PPE concerns. With liquid fluoride, if you're using it in a bulk storage tank or a mini bulk tank, there is minimal to no contact needed by the operator in order to feed this, because basically it's being brought in, it's being fed through a closed line, and it's being pumped out of the tank to the process, and there's no contact with the actual chemical. And that's about as safe as it gets for this type of thing. So we want to make sure that we do address PPE concerns if there ever needs to be any kind of maintenance done on lines or pumps that feed the chemistry, and that will protect the operator in that part of the process. Next slide, please. So how do these feed systems work, and how do we ensure that we are feeding the appropriate dose of fluoride? And we'll outline the two different ones. And this is an example of a dry fluoride feed system, and it's called a saturator. And you look at the two tanks there, we add the dry fluoride from the bags to that left tank, and there's a level at the bottom that is maintained. And then water is added to that tank that flows up through that fluoride. And because of the dissolution properties, the way that fluoride dissolves, it's going to form roughly a 4% solution in that water. And then you can see the line that connects the two tanks. As that solution is formed, it goes to the tank to the right, which is the storage and feed tank. And then from that tank, it is fed using typically a metering pump, and that could be a positive displacement pump like a diaphragm pump or a peristaltic pump. And then there's usually a fluoride probe somewhere in that line that makes sure that it is being fed at the proper dose level, and that dose level is being maintained. So this is a brand new system. One of the drawbacks of these systems is that you've got routine chemical contact. When you are opening that tank on the left and putting bags of dry fluoride into it, you have to dress up in PPE, and you're going to have contact with the actual chemical. Another drawback could be the saturation accuracy. Mentioned it's about 4%, but it's about 4%. So that is going to make the dosing a little bit more difficult. If you have a feedback probe, that's not typically a problem. But again, the concentration may not be as consistent as it could be. It will shut down if the bed depth, if the operator fails to add chemistry to it, it will shut down if that bed is not deep enough. It can be messy. When you're dumping fluoride bags, it is not necessarily a neat operation. Also, you have the residue left on the fluoride bags once they're empty. So there's a cleanout process associated with this also. So kind of a labor-intensive process, but it does work, and it can be made to be accurate. So if we compare this on the next slide to the liquid feed system, it's much, much simpler. And that's a pretty ski resort, but that's not my slide. Okay. So this is much, much simpler because the material arrives already made up. So it arrives in drums or possibly totes or in bulk or mini bulk. And that solution is put directly into a storage tank, or it can be pumped directly out of the drums or totes and then either fed directly or fed through a day tank. So usually, the process from there on out is the same as the other. You take a positive displacement metering pump, you have a dose level probe for fluoride, and you can dose your fluoride solution. So the advantages of this are pretty obvious. One is the concentration assay is conducted in a lab. So when you get either a truckload of this material or drums of this material, you have a known concentration of it that's been analyzed in a chemical laboratory. So it gives you a lot of accuracy. What it also provides you is minimal, if any, daily operator contact with the product, because once it's delivered into the tank, it remains in there, is fed into the process. It does not require daily or weekly addition of chemistry by an operator. So this gives you improved consistency, and it also gives you reduced waste because you don't have any of those bags of fluoride that you have to dispose of. And you use every drop that you buy. And next slide, please. All right, I saw a quick question pop up, and I'll address it. And this is about containment. If you look at those tanks, they don't appear to have a containment basin, but those are actually double-walled storage tanks. And yes, you do require containment for chemistry like this. Those particular tanks have a tank inside a tank, and if the inner tank was to fail, it's captured in the outside tank. So just wanted to address that. I saw it pop up, but that's very typical for this kind of chemistry. So whether you have a full-scale storage tank, 4,000 gallons or so outside, or you have a mini bulk tank of about 400 gallons, the bottom one there on the left, this material can be delivered directly to the truck in those. From there, it's up to the plant, but many plants will use a day tank. So they pump a small amount of that product over to the day tank and feed from that day tank. Sometimes that day tank is on a scale. And this just gives another level of accuracy with regards to how much chemistry you're feeding per day. With regards to the day tank too, you want to make sure your systems are designed not to siphon, so that when your metering pump is metering a certain amount, that you're actually getting that amount into the process. And that's another good reason to do a day tank. If there's ever an issue with that, there's only a small amount of chemistry that's involved in that part of the process. Metering pumps can be anything from peristaltics, like the one pictured there. Diaphragm pumps are a lot of ones to choose from. Very, very accurate metering allows you to get your doses dialed in very, very accurately. So as you can see, this type of system requires much more minimal operator contact in order to dose fluoride. Next slide, please. All right, so just to give you an idea how much of this chemistry is used, and the number has been mentioned, we're looking for target fluoride levels in the finished water of about 0.7 milligrams per liter or 0.7 parts per million. We're going to assume that the water we're treating here has 0 to begin with. There are a lot of naturally occurring waters, down in Florida especially, where they're actually taking fluoride out of the water in order to reach that 0.7 value. They actually have more fluoride than this naturally occurring, so they reduce it. And there are some that have, slightly below that, and they just bring it up to the 0.7 level with the added fluoride. But you could see down there in the chart and those formulas, they look complicated, but they're really not. They just have to do with the concentration of the product, the amount of the part of that molecule that is actual fluoride, and a couple of numbers. And really all you have to do is change the flow rate of your plant, the MGD, you plug that into that, and you can get the pounds per day of the chemistry. But you can see the differences there. If you have a 1 MGD plant, you're feeding about 13 pounds of sodium fluoride per day. So you're going through roughly a bag and a half or almost 2 bags per week. So those are contact exposure times with that particular chemistry, where if you were using the liquid product, and even if you were using the very smallest package for that product, which is a 55-gallon drum, you would only have to use about roughly just under half a drum per week. So much, much less contact. If you're using bulk, like I said, you have 0 contact with that product. So fluoride can be fed very accurately. There's a lot of math to it, but it's actually fairly simple once you kind of have it all put into something like this. And that's how the 3 different chemistries compare there. All right, next slide. So finally, I'm going to kind of wrap this up a little bit, and this is going to hold true for any of the chemistry that you feed. And the importance of proper maintenance and system upkeep is very crucial. The storage tanks, your pumps, any of your probes, if you're using scales, maintenance and upkeep of that is important with regards to accuracy. Fluoride is one of those chemistries that we feed at the tail end of the treatment process. So we want to make sure that when we are feeding it, that we're as accurate as we can be. And with today's technology and instrumentation, we could be extremely accurate in this process. Good housekeeping is another rule to kind of follow. And that, again, when you're working with chemistry, like not only fluoride, but sulfuric acid or ferric chloride, alum, some of those other chemistries that we use in drinking water, it's important to make sure that any minor spills or things are addressed and that good housekeeping is being practiced. We also want to practice accurate record keeping. This helps us understand what we've done and be able to trace things back if we have a problem. So accurate record keeping, very important. Also, the use of personal protective equipment when needed. This is, I can't stress this enough. And I would like to, to say that this is the last line of defense. Hopefully you have a lot of these engineering controls and things that have been put in place before, but PPE is the last line of defense. So it's important to wear it for the particular function that you're doing. Next slide. All right, so just to go back to that safety and simplicity, we want to make sure that our processes are safe. And again, it's safe not only for the community, but for our operators. So just a change in product, you're able to maintain the same type of treatment, but changing the product type affords you things like minimal contact, reduced exposure because you're working with a closed system, reduced need for PPE outside of maintenance issues, and finally, reduced waste handling. So the difference in a dry product versus a liquid product could certainly bring along some of those benefits. The simplicity side, a liquid chemistry, we're seeing a change to liquid chemistry and a lot of the other chemistry that we see dosed into drinking water. There was a time that dry alum was fed into drinking water, and there may be some plants that are still doing that, but it's all gone to liquid just because it's much easier to measure, much easier to meter. Metering pumps can be extremely accurate. There's little or no disposal associated with it, and it's very simple engineering to implement. And I believe that's the last slide.
Great. My name is Matt Jacob. I'm a communications consultant with Virginia Health Catalyst, and I'm going to walk you through some tips. Next slide, please, that can help all of us communicate more effectively. But, the focus here again is on the water system community being able to talk effectively and really put these issues in context for their water customers. Next slide, please. I think the good news right up front, and Sarah Holland really flagged this point, is you are trusted. Local governments, municipal governments, county governments, they have a high level of trust. That survey that she referred to, local governments were the only entity that were actually in the majority. Most Virginians said, yeah, if I wanted to get information about water quality, I would have, a high level of trust that what they were telling me was accurate, was relevant to me. You see those numbers just slowly dip downward. Even the EPA is viewed as a little less reliable or trustworthy than local government. So this is something I think that local water systems can take some pride in, can take stock in. Next slide, please. So I want to walk through 4 tips for talking with non-scientific audiences, and that's kind of a fancy way of saying the public and also most of our policymakers do not have a genuine sort of scientific background or credentials. So a lot of the terms, Jose gave a great presentation, but of course, those terms you all readily understand, but it's difficult for a lot of policymakers and water customers to really sink their teeth in and understand those terms. So that's why it's important as you communicate to try and translate some of those. Having FAQs or fact sheets on your homepage is really important. I highly recommend that. Next slide, please. And when we're drafting those, I think it's really important that we make them as reader friendly as we can. So that means plain language. I would exercise care when you're using certain terms. For example, the word contaminant, whether it's an organic contaminant or inorganic, we know those are referenced in tables in the consumer confidence reports that you all send out to customers. But that term has a very different meaning in federal drinking water laws than it does to ordinary people. So you refer to a contaminant, that's sort of a bad thing, period, at any level. So just exercise some caution about choosing words. Next slide, please. And the good news is you don't have to start from scratch. There are some really good sources you can reach out and draw from and rely on for the information you would put into your FAQ. The CDC itself has an FAQ on its website. That might serve as a model. The Harvard Kennedy School has a page called the Journalist Resource. They answer 15 common questions. So, there are places you can go to, as well as checking in with your Virginia Health Department and also checking into the Virginia Health Catalyst as well, right? So all very useful. Next slide, please. You want to provide context, right? So I think one of the challenges with communication is it's a lot of times when we tell somebody certain information, their ability to understand that and apply it somewhere means they have some background knowledge, some context. So one of the things that's useful, sometimes we take it for granted that we think people know, but it is important to stipulate the reason for water fluoridation, and that is the desire to reduce tooth decay. Next slide, please. Of course, this is one thing we do. We in a lot of our water quality reports, this is just a little screenshot from Richmond's water system. It says right up there, added to promote dental health. And so articulating that more broadly is important. Next slide, please. We also want to identify fluoride as a mineral. That's how the National Institutes of Health defines it. That's how American Water Works Association defines it. It's a mineral. It comes in certain chemical compounds, different variations of fluoride additive, and Jose did a great job of walking through, examples of what those are, liquid or solid, et cetera. But at the end of the day, the fluoride ions there, that's a mineral and exists naturally. That's an important context as well. Next slide, please. And some of our previous speakers have alluded to this, and I think it is worth considering how we can use analogies and metaphors to improve the public's understanding. Next slide, please. And I think, it's important to flag that, hey, if you go to a drugstore or grocery store and you go to the vitamin or mineral supplements aisle, you take these things off the shelf and you turn around on the back side, you are likely to see a warning label, an advisory on the back. And again, it reflects the fact that in our society, we err on the side of cautioning and warning people more than we would say, not say anything, not tell them anything, right? And probably the lawyers in some of these companies that advise them also err on the side of full disclosure, right, as a legal kind of protection. So that's what's going on here. It doesn't, nobody should fear iron. We shouldn't fear calcium or fluoride when it is being provided at a recommended level, and the levels that's generally consumed are recommended. So that's something to keep in mind. Next slide, please. And then Dr. Castellas referred to this point about the analogy here, and I think this can be helpful because the best analogies connect with something people already know, right? People know if they own a car that there are seatbelts in them, there are airbags in them. When we installed airbags, we didn't say, "Oh, those seatbelts aren't needed anymore," right? They're complementary, and that's what the CDC tells us about fluoride in toothpaste and water. Next slide, please. So last but not least, establish a clear protocol within your water system. And this means making note of when and how water personnel reply to emails. Next slide, please. That means deciding who is authorized to reply. And then secondly, next slide, what they should say. And then you want to use that same language consistently. Next slide. I have an example of a template. This could be useful. Catalyst has a Word document of this. If any of you are interested, that could be shared after this webinar. Next slide, please. But the idea is to welcome their interest, to give them some overarching information. Next slide. And then to refer them to other places where they can get more information that we know is going to be evidence-based. Next slide. I also want to flag this great resource that's on the Catalyst website. What I like about it is it both has information about proactive outreach and education about water quality and fluoride and other things, but it also speaks to if you face a crisis, right? The Richmond water system recently encountered one. And so sort of how to deal with a communication crisis of some kind. Next slide. This is really a game changer, and it's a game changer because we've found a way to provide benefits to children and adults without making them leave their homes or change their schedules, wait in lines, pay an extra premium. And that's why I think so many of us really see the benefits of fluoridation. Next slide. And so I think we're going to go to Q&A portion, and it's been a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much, Matt. And we do already have some questions in the chat, and please do continue to put them in the chat. We're monitoring them. First, I want to ask Jose to weigh in. One of the questions was whether or not there were any byproducts to be concerned about. If Jose is answering, I cannot hear him.
All right, let's try this again.
Sorry about that.
No, that's all right. I appreciate it. No, I'm not sure exactly the question that you're asking for, if there's a byproduct that is used for fluoridation.
I think it came toward the end of your presentation. So I think it was if the person who wrote the question would like to add some context to that to make sure you're answering it correctly.
I mean, as far as anything that may be in the fluoride itself, that's like I said, like I mentioned during the presentation, NSF addresses that, and there's several hundred. Okay, I'm seeing similar to disinfection byproducts by fluoridating water. No, this is a simple addition of a mineral to the water. So by doing so, this is different than, say, chlorine or bleach, where that material could react with something that's in the water and form some of these negative byproducts. That does not happen with fluoride. So that addresses the question.
Awesome, thank you. Another question that came in that I'll speak to, but I think some of the other panelists may have the ability to weigh in as well, was how many people are even drinking tap water? Like, how important is this at the end of the day? And I think that question is far more nuanced than I think anyone realized. One of the things that our survey revealed, our statewide water perception survey, was that most people were drinking some tap water, and it really skewed by demographics. So the group that is most likely to be drinking and relying almost exclusively, or at least most exclusively, on the water that is coming from their tap water are higher income white Virginians. Lower income Virginians are more likely to rely on bottled water and more likely to express some distrust for the water system as a whole. I think everyone on this call would recognize that that's a relatively generational and very rational mistrust that folks have of the water system, stemming from inequities that have been happening and generational disinvestment that's been happening in water systems for a while. So I don't know if Matt or anybody else has. I mean, there's been some national studies that show that like 30% of the population is drinking exclusively tap water. I'm not 100% sure how reliable those surveys are, but I think I'll just say it's fraught. And we just had one more question come in about the formation. Oh, this is where you can tell I am not a scientist. The formation of fluoropatite. Jose, can you read the chat?
Let's see. Formation of fluorapatite. Okay, I believe that's a
Oh,
calcium
I tried to make it
phosphate
French.
based
Mhm.
mineral. I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I'm not qualified to answer that, but I don't see where that is a common occurrence. But that's something I would have to research, and I can send some information back on that. But I have not run into that in my dealings with the water treatment.
Perfect.
I
Another
actually-
question. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Dr. Castle.
I was gonna say, so the fluoroappetite from like the dental perspective, when we talk about your teeth being strengthened by fluoride, it is the formation of those fluoride apatite crystals for your teeth. So your teeth, this is again, I'm going to talk about it through the dentist perspective, and I definitely, Jose, please look from our water operator's perspective, but at least for me, for the dentist, what I get excited about with what fluoride is able to do. Your teeth are actually constantly going through this very mini breakdown rebuilding process. It's the same thing that your bones are doing as well. Your teeth are bones. Your bones do this too. They are constantly breaking down and reforming. And what's really cool about fluoride is when it does that, when our teeth are going through this process of breaking down and reforming, that fluoride gets incorporated into that reforming like structure of your tooth. The process is called remineralization. And that remineralized structure is significantly stronger than it would be if it did not have that fluoride in it. So like from the dentist perspective, that's what's happening to your teeth when we put fluoride as part of within our as we utilize fluoride is what I'm trying to say. So I can talk about fluorapatite for your teeth, but in terms of everything else, I will defer to Jose and we can do a little more research about anything else. I hope that answers a little of that question.
Sarah, the question about water filters, and this is just as a general rule, don't hold me to that. It's always good to look at the product, the packaging usually will indicate something like that. And perhaps Dr. Castells can also kind of weigh in on this. But my understanding is, as a general rule, fluoride is not filtered out when the filter is embedded in a pitcher or in your refrigerator, or if the filter is placed directly on the tap. Usually a reverse osmosis system that takes fluoride out has to be installed below the faucet under the sink below it. You usually will see it hooked up at that point of entry. So and I defer to others who can speak to this probably a little more kind of from a technical standpoint or clinical.
I will just say, Matt hit the nail on the head with that. When we talk about pitchers, things directly on your faucet, that's not going to take the fluoride out. It's that reverse osmosis that you might be utilizing on your water system in your home that takes the fluoride out.
Thank you all. So we're at time, and I want to briefly let Jill just provide some resources to some of the questions in the chat have been asking about citations for some of the data and additional resources. We will be sending out a pretty comprehensive after email that includes a link to the recording of today's webinar, as well as some of the FAQs that Matt referenced, that Jose referenced, and some additional information that I think will be helpful to you all to share with your communities and constituents. And I do want to pass it over to Jill quickly to talk briefly about some of the resources that are available to you all from the VDH.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay, just to wrap it up, as waterworks operators, I'm hoping that you now have an understanding of the profound impact that you have on the oral health of people in the communities that you serve. Using the knowledge of what fluoride is, how community water fluoridation works on teeth, and how to safely handle it at work prepares us all to handle any pushback from community water fluoridation that may arise in the future. Also, as I mentioned before, you may see me again later this year as I tour different facilities throughout the state. This is because each month I receive a fluoride tracking report for each location. These reports show me what sites are optimally fluoridated and which are not. If your site is optimally fluoridated, I may still come and introduce myself and see what's working well for you as you set the standard. For the sites who are not optimally fluoridating, I'll come by to discuss how VDH may be able to assist with funding for needed equipment related to repairing or maintaining fluoride feed systems through our mini grants. The grant application is on the Virginia Department of Health's website under Community Water Fluoridation, and there will be a grant funding guide as well as a list of grant eligible items. So if you see me at your facility next time, don't worry, I'm only there to meet you and to help wherever I can. Also, if you have not done so already, check out the CDC's Flow Training, that's short for Fluoride Learning Online. This is a great free online resource for waterworks operators that teach how water treatment systems are designed and operate for fluoride equipment, as well as providing lessons on additive safety and training. We will go ahead and add the link into the chat for anyone interested. Please know that I am here along with everyone in the Virginia Department of Health's dental team, the Office of Drinking Water, and the Virginia Health Catalyst to provide support, help answer any questions, and provide ongoing training. So please feel free to reach out to any of us at any time. And thank you so much for your time and attendance today.
Thanks, Jill. And again, as I said, we'll be sending out all of the resources that were referenced today in a follow-up email, and appreciate so much everyone's time. And thank you very much for all of that you guys are doing to help Virginia be one of the healthiest states in the nation. Have a terrific day.
Thank you.